All right, so we are learning Pirkei Avos chapter 3, and this week's Mishnah, I called Mishnah 19, because it's the 19th one that we're doing in this chapter, although, as I've mentioned, different printings break them up differently, but it is the Mishnah that begins Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer. And it's quite a long Mishnah, at least the way it's broken up here. It's considered one Mishnah here. I think we'll probably cover the first half and save the second half for next time. So, okay, so the Mishnah says as follows. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer. Rabbi Elazar the son of Azariah said, Im ein Torah, ein derech eretz. If you don't have Torah, then you don't have derech eretz. Derech eretz is literally means like the way of the land. But we'll see different when we use it colloquially, derech eretz usually means like respect for people, proper conduct. So that may be one way to read this Mishnah, and we'll see there might possibly be others. So im ein Torah ein derech eretz. If a person doesn't have Torah, then they don't have derech eretz. Im ein derech eretz ein Torah. On the other hand, if you don't have derech eretz, then you don't have Torah. Im ein chachma ein yira. If one doesn't have chachma, we'll just loosely translate that as wisdom, then they don't have yira, they don't have fear or awe of God. Im ein yira ein chachma. If you don't have fear or awe of God, then you don't have chachma, you don't have wisdom. Im ein bina ein das. If you don't have bina, which for now we'll translate as understanding, it's a very vague translation, but then you don't have das, and again we'll loosely translate that for now as knowledge. Im ein das ein bina. If you don't have knowledge, then you don't have understanding. So you don't have understanding, you don't have knowledge, you don't have knowledge, you don't have understanding. Okay, we're going to come back to everything and try to explain them. Im ein kemach ein Torah. If you don't have flour, then you don't have Torah. Im ein Torah ein kemach. If you don't have Torah, then you don't have flour. Flour, flour. Okay, so that's a quick run through the Mishnah. And now let's go through it a little more slowly and break it down using the commentary of the Midrash Shmuel. So Midrash Shmuel opens by first of all presenting a general problem within this Mishnah, which is that every line in the Mishnah seems to contradict itself, or at least create a impossibility, because it says if you don't have Torah, then you can't have derech eretz. But if you don't have derech eretz, you can't have Torah. So how are you going to get either of them? You know, if you it's circular. If you don't have one, you can't have the other. If you don't have that one, you don't have this one, so you don't have nothing. So how do we resolve that? And really, that's throughout the Mishnah. Each of the comparisons or the statements that the Mishnah makes, we run into that question. So that's the first thing he puts out there. Now starting with the first clause of the Mishnah, it says im ein Torah ein derech eretz. If a person doesn't have Torah, then they don't have derech eretz. They don't have derech eretz, then they don't have Torah. So at least in this first approach, he will understand derech eretz in the traditional way, which means proper conduct, respect for people. Someone who has derech eretz, you treat people properly. So he says, is this really true? If one doesn't have Torah, then they can't have derech eretz. He says there are plenty of Gentiles who don't have Torah, and they're very fine people. They have derech eretz, and there's plenty of Jews who don't have so much Torah, and they also have derech eretz. They're very fine people. So it just doesn't seem to be the case. And not only that, but he says even the word that we use for a Jew who doesn't know much Torah, so we call that am haaretz. Somebody who's ignorant, they don't know Torah, they're an am haaretz. He says the word am haaretz means it literally means like a nation of the land, but it means a person of the land. And he says it's the same. It relates to the word derech eretz. You have derech eretz, the way of the land. You have am haaretz, a person of the land, meaning like a person who just functions normally in civil society, but at least like understands the way of the land, the way people should conduct themselves, but they don't have Torah. So is this even true that if you don't have Torah, then you can't have proper derech eretz, you can't have proper respect? So he says that actually what the Mishnah means is there's derech eretz and then there's derech eretz, right? There's proper conduct and then there's the Torah's expectation for the way we are to conduct ourselves. And he says it's true, a person can be a great person and conduct themselves in a very fine way without Torah. But he says you can't compare that to what a person can become through learning Torah and working on themselves with Torah. And there's a certain higher expectation or higher quality from a person who has learned Torah, really from the Torah's expectations. Just for a simple example, out in the world, like the concept of lashon hara, of speaking gossip, is like, you don't want to slander someone, but to gossip at someone is not necessarily so frowned upon. Okay, it depends on where you are, but it's kind of accepted. We have a higher standard. And there's many, many examples of how far we're supposed to go for others is just a higher of chesed, a higher expectation, and we try to live up to that. What we do for our community is the chesed that we do, the acts of kindness that we do is hopefully on a higher standard, and it's not coincidental. It's because we have a Torah that's a guiding light for us, and so it raises the bar on derech eretz, on how we are to treat certainly each other, but everybody, really, all human beings, and that's what it's telling us. Imein Torah, ein derech eretz. If you don't have Torah, then you don't have derech eretz. Means you don't have this higher level and higher expectation, and higher potential, really, that we get when we have Torah. And on the other hand, if you don't have derech eretz, then you don't have Torah. What does that mean? So it means that still the basic derech eretz, the basic understanding of how to treat people and how to relate to people, is actually a prerequisite to be able to acquire Torah. And he doesn't really explain why, but I think we to get something out of learning, a person has to already have an innate sense of right and wrong, of proper conduct, and then when they go and learn, so then they can appreciate it and appreciate what the Torah is asking of us, and strive for that higher level that we're describing. But the starting point is, there's an expression in the Mishna, I think it's in Avos, right? Derech eretz kadma la Torah. Derech eretz precedes Torah, and again, different ways to interpret that, but one is that a person has to have a basic human decency and respect to be able to grow from the experience of learning Torah. So without a derech eretz, you can't have Torah, but without Torah, you can't have that higher degree of derech eretz that the Torah teaches us. Okay, that is one approach. A second approach. Let's see. Okay, let's go with this. He quotes from the Chassid Yavetz. Another, again, the Midrash Shmuel is writing in the 16th century, so anyone he's quoting is, at least from another early commentator. And so he quotes from the Chassid Yavetz that as follows: the way of the world, derech eretz, is what is a way of describing life. Life is derech eretz, the way of the world. We in his time, we plant and we harvest, and we go to sleep and we wake up and we build houses and we eat and we drink and we have our daily life, right? For us, maybe we're not planting and harvesting, but we're doing other things. We go to the store, we come back, we go to work, we have our daily routine. That's derech eretz. But what's the purpose of all that? what's the purpose of that? It's all to be able to create a arena or a place where we can fulfill Torah. That's the purpose of the world. The purpose of the world is to create a space where God's will can be fulfilled. And actually, even though we say derech eretz kadma Torah, like we said before, derech eretz comes before Torah, but Torah comes before the world. The sages teach us that God looked into the Torah and created the world. And so the Torah is the blueprint of the world. And so the world is the place where Torah can be expressed and where the goals of Torah can be realized. And that's really the entire purpose. And so, and in fact, he says, when the Talmud, the Gemara teaches us that when God was ready to give the Torah to the Jewish people, so the angels said, what are you doing? Why are you giving it to man? Leave the Torah in heaven. And God actually said to Moshe, you should respond to them. And Moshe's response was basically like, do you work that you need to rest on Shabbos? Do you have parents that you need to honor your parents? Like, this isn't for angels, this is for people. Okay, a lot of discussion what exactly what was the back and forth. But what you see, what that teaches us is that Moshe was saying the Torah is designed, or the way that the Torah looks to us at least, is meant for this world, and this world is meant for the Torah. The world is designed to be able to have a place where we can practice the mitzvos, the commandments of the Torah. And so he says that's what this Mishnah is saying. Im ein derech eretz ein Torah. If you don't have a world that functions like the world does, where we are human and we go about and do human activities, then there's no Torah. That's exactly what Moshe was saying to them. The Torah doesn't belong in heaven. It belongs on earth. It belongs here, where there's a place and a setting for us to be able to fulfill the Torah. So this is a different interpretation of derech eretz. Our first interpretation was, as we use it colloquially, like derech eretz, to have respect. And this interpretation, derech eretz, means the way of the land, which is literally what it means. The way of the land. It means life, and it means normal human activity. If you don't have normal human activity, then you don't have a space where Torah can be practiced. And on the flip side, im ein Torah ein derech eretz. If you don't have Torah, you don't have derech eretz. What that means is nothing has purpose. Then, if you don't have Torah, then all of that human activity that we just gave examples of, you have it, but you don't really have it because it has no meaning. So in order for all of that to be significant, then you need Torah. So in ein Torah ein derech eretz. If you don't have Torah, then there's in ein derech eretz ein Torah. If you don't have human life, then there's no setting for Torah to be fulfilled. On the flip side, if you don't have Torah, then you don't have a way to give meaning to all of that daily activity. Okay. Next. So then the Mishnah continues. The second clause was im ein chachma ein yira. If you don't have fear of God, then you don't have yira. You don't have im ein chachma, you don't have wisdom, you don't have fear of God. And if you don't have yira, if you don't have fear of God, then you don't have chachma, then you don't have wisdom. So what does that mean? So what kind of wisdom are we talking about? So simply understood, we mean wisdom of Torah, knowledge of Torah. And what it might be teaching us is that if a person doesn't have fear of God, they just have wisdom, they know a lot, right? But it doesn't carry over into the way that they live. They don't care about anything. I learn a lot of Torah, but I don't actually care to practice it, to carry it out. It doesn't impact my life in any way. So that's just academic. Then in a certain way, the wisdom's worthless. If they don't have if they don't have fear of heaven, if it doesn't affect the way that the person comports themselves, so then in a certain sense, any wisdom they have is useless, is worthless. So in Yira, if a person doesn't have fear of God, then they don't have wisdom. And if they don't have I started with the second one. If they don't have wisdom, then they don't have fear of God, meaning 1 second. Let me just get this. This is very confusing Mishnah because you have to go back and forth and like so let me just get this straight. Okay, the truth is he's really focusing on one side in this particular interpretation. So it's up to us to then flip it. So again, if a person doesn't have wisdom, we're starting on the other side. If a person doesn't have yira, that's what he's focused on. If a person doesn't have fear of God, then they don't have wisdom, meaning you look at someone and even though they've learned so much, but it doesn't carry over in the way that they live, so then they really, in a certain way, their wisdom is worthless. But you can have someone on the other hand who doesn't know so much, but they live with the fear of God. The way that they live is it appears as if they have a lot of wisdom. In a way they do. Even in a certain sense, the limited wisdom that they have, though, is so valuable if it can carry over in such a way in the way that they live. Okay, in this interpretation, he doesn't go back to the other side. If you don't have wisdom, then you don't have fear of God. If you don't have wisdom, okay, we could go. Let's go to the next interpretation because I think they can kind of flow and mix together. And that is as follows. He says, really, there's two ways that fear of heaven, awe of heaven can impact us. One is in the potential, and one is in practice. So a person has a recognition, God is the master of the universe, and therefore I would like to fulfill his will. I might not know how, but I would like to. So that's like in potential. The fear of God creates a potential to, again, the awe of God that creates a potential to want to carry out his will. And then there's a second level, which is that in action, I do so with a sense of awe of God, and it impacts the way I do my actions and the way I fulfill the mitzvos and ensures that I do fulfill the mitzvos. So there's fear of God in potential, and then there's fear of God in action. Now, so and both are important, and it's the fear of God in action that causes us to fulfill mitzvos, and we could say, and the Mishnah said, we had an earlier Mishnah that said, Ein bur yirei chet. Somebody who doesn't know anything, who's ignorant, they can't really fear sin because they don't really know what they're supposed to or not supposed to do. So in the application of it, in the fear of God applied, if one doesn't know anything, then it can't really carry over into the way that they act because they don't know how they should or shouldn't act. So that's over here as well. When it says in ein chachma, if a person doesn't have wisdom, they can't have fear of God. It means if we don't learn how we're supposed to act, then we can't really act in a way that expresses that fear of God, because we don't know if we're doing right or wrong or what's right or wrong. So in this approach, the first clause is im ein chachma ein yira. If a person doesn't have wisdom, a person doesn't have learning, a person doesn't learn how they're supposed to comport themselves, so then they can't really have yira. They can't have that active fear of God and how I'm supposed to carry this out. Am I doing it the right way? I want to do it with the most, with the most passion and alacrity and everything, because I don't even know what to do. So So if there's no wisdom, you can't have fear of God in action. On the other hand, if there's no fear of God, then there's no desire to acquire wisdom. And that's the other type of fear of God, that fear of God in potential, where it's true. I right now, I don't know what to do, but I want to know what to do. I want to know what God expects from me. I have a fear of God. I walk with the knowledge that this is God's universe, and it's up to me to I have to take the time to find out how I'm supposed to live. And if a person doesn't have that, then they're not going to seek wisdom. They're not going to try to learn how to act, and they're going to just sit and be content with wherever they're holding and not try to grow. So if a prerequisite to wanting to learn is that fear of God, that desire to grow, that desire to fulfill God's will. So in this way, we'll say like this: if there's no wisdom, if a person doesn't know, then they won't have the fear of God in action because they don't know what to do. But if they don't have fear of God in potential, meaning if they don't seek to learn, seek to do better, strive, then they're not going to try to learn. So that's the second one. In Yira, if there's no fear of God in potential without knowing, but seek out wisdom and seek out Torah and seek out how they're supposed to live. Okay, and then the Mishnah says, Im ein bina, ein das, im ein das, ein bina. If one doesn't have bina, bina will loosely translate as understanding, then they don't have das, they don't have knowledge. And if they don't have knowledge, they don't have understanding. Okay, so what do these words mean? Those are English words, very nice, but what do they actually mean? So he has a couple of suggestions. One is like this. Das, he says, which we're translating as knowledge, is specifically the type of knowledge to distinguish between what's good and bad, what's right and wrong, and kind of like we find like the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, right? The tree of knowledge of good and evil. So knowledge is can be the ability to distinguish between what's good and what's not. Bina is, and this is kind of very common that we understand it to mean this, it's what he calls Maven Davar Mitoch Davar. It means to understand one thing from another, to extrapolate, to build on ideas. Bina relates to the Hebrew word like binyan, which is to build, bonet, to build. So Bina is understanding, but it's a type of understanding where I understand it, that I can build on it. I can extrapolate, I can apply it to other scenarios. It's a different type of wisdom, I'd say. So das is kind of the ability to, according to this approach, the ability to distinguish good from bad, right from wrong, and bina is then to be able to apply that to other scenarios. So according to this, the Mishnah is saying like this: if a person doesn't have das, they don't have this ability to sort out what's straight, what's right, what makes sense, right? You can hear different things, and to be able to kind of recognize truth or recognize what's right from the different things we hear, that's what he's calling das. So if you don't have that ability, then you can have the ability to extrapolate from today till tomorrow, but if you don't have the foundations right, then your extrapolations are going to be all wrong. So if we hear different things, and we can't distinguish and figure out what's sound and what's right and what's real, then, and we, let's say, even make the wrong conclusion, draw the wrong conclusion, well, then when we use our bina then to extrapolate and apply it to another situation, well, we're just getting even further off course because we've now taken the wrong idea that we started with and applying it to an additional situation. So if one doesn't have first that ability to kind of sense what's right, that das, then their bina, their ability to extrapolate to other scenarios, is not going to be very useful. and it's as if they don't even have it because it's being misused. On the other hand, if they have that discerning capability, that when they hear different things, they can kind of zero in on what's right, what's correct, what's true, but they don't have that ability to apply it to other situations. They don't have that bina. So then, in a certain way, it's not so useful, that first das, because it's very narrow, it's very limited. That yes, they heard nice speech or whatever, they heard a class, and they were able to determine and conclude what was right, what made sense, and what they had that discerning quality. But then if they don't know how to apply it, so then that kind of limits it. So they don't know how to apply it to other scenarios, apply it in their life. So that very much limits it. So that's im ein das im ein bina ein das. If you don't have the ability to extrapolate and apply it to other scenarios, then that das really is kind of limited to itself. That thing that we might have learned and discerned as true and correct is very limited if we can't actually take it and run with it and use it in other situations. So that's one explanation. Again, im ein. We'll go. He does it out of order. Im ein das ein bina. If we don't have the ability to come to the correct conclusions, to discern right from wrong, to discern truth from falsehood, then our bina, our ability to extrapolate, is useless, because it's going to be misused, misappropriated. We're going to take the wrong idea and then apply it to another situation. That's as if we don't have that ability in the first place. So if we don't have the das, the ability to settle on truth, then our bina, our ability to extrapolate, is useless. On the other hand, even if we do have that das, but if we don't have the ability to extrapolate, then it very much limits what we can do with what we've learned or what we've concluded, and almost renders it useless because it's so limited. Okay, that's one possibility. Second possibility, very different. He says das, which we translate as knowledge, is exactly that. Das means knowledge. It means the ability to retain things that we've learned. So we study Torah, and we go through some Torah, and we if we have das, so das would be the ability to retain it. Now, where does that ability come from? It's really God-given, right? And we pray for it every day. We say, Ata chonein adam das. God, you are chonein das. Chonein comes from relates to the word hinam, which is free. It means gracious. So God, you graciously give das. That means it's not something we can really acquire. Maybe somebody could do some of these like memory tools, but to a certain degree, the ability to remember things is God-given, and we pray that we should have it too. But so that's das is general knowledge, what we might call bikius, the ability to retain information. And then there's bina. Bina is understanding. So again, it could either be understood as extrapolation, the ability to apply the ideas to other scenarios, or it could be understood, again, the way we simply translate in English is to understand. So because we can remember things, but we don't really understand them, then we don't really have them. So where a person can rattle off something that they learned without really understanding it, because they just have a good memory. So according to this, if das is knowledge, is the book knowledge, basically the ability to repeat and remember things, and bina is either the ability to extrapolate or the ability to understand. So we'd be saying as follows. So im ein das, the person doesn't have general knowledge, so then ein bina, there's nothing to extrapolate from, right? Until we have that general knowledge, we're not going to be able to extrapolate and apply, because because we don't have a starting point. Especially because in the light of Torah study, because so much of understanding Torah is really the ability to compare and contrast and question, how does this fit with this? So there's a certain level of bikius, of general knowledge, that we need to be able to retain to really be able to get to the bottom of things. So, thankfully now so much of it is already on the pages of our books, where so other people have done the work for us. But so much of Torah is, well, it says over here this, and it says over here this, that they seem to contradict each other, but the Torah never contradicts itself. So how do we resolve that? And we extrapolate, we come up with like a new, something new that we've learned from it. But if we don't have that das, if we don't know it says this here and it says this here, and how do we resolve and reconcile these things, then we can't really bring out new ideas. That's so that's imein das, imein bina. If we don't have that general knowledge, then we're not going to be able to extrapolate and come up with these new levels and new ideas. On the other hand, if we don't have bina, we don't have that either ability to extrapolate or understanding, then our das, our knowledge, isn't getting us so far. So we have two interpretations of what bina might be. So we said bina could be extrapolation. If I can't extrapolate, so I have all these different ideas in my head, but if I can't compare and contrast and come up with answers and kind of build on those ideas, then again, it's limited in how far it goes. So it's great that a person has das, they have a lot of knowledge, but if they can't apply that knowledge, they don't have the bina to apply that knowledge, then in a certain way, it's not so useful. So imein bina, imein das. If the person doesn't have understanding and ability to extrapolate and apply, then their das, their knowledge, isn't taking them so far. Or imein, in a much simpler way, if we understand bina to just mean understanding, so imein, if a person doesn't have understanding, then they don't really have knowledge, right? If somebody can rant off a whole chapter of Mishna or something, or whatever it might be, something in Torah, so they can rant it off, but they don't understand what they're saying, and then they can't explain it, they don't have an understanding, then what do they really have? They've memorized words. Okay, it could be there's some value in just saying words of Torah. I think there is some value in that, but it's not really the goal. The goal is not just to say Torah, but to understand Torah. So if we have das, if we have knowledge, we've memorized pages and pages of the Gemara, but we can just rattle it off. We can't actually explain what it's saying. So then we don't have bina, we don't have understanding. Then it's just a voice. It's just a talking, and it doesn't have meaning. So that's imein bina ein das. If we don't have an understanding of what we're saying, then we don't really have that knowledge. Isn't very useful in the first place. Okay, then the Mishnah says, im ein kemach ein Torah. If we don't have flour, then we don't have Torah. And if we don't have Torah, then we don't have flour. So flour could be, on the most simple understanding, a way of expressing food. So that's how we make food. We take our flour, we make food. So if a person doesn't have food, then they're not going to have Torah. Why? So firstly, because we won't be able to pursue Torah study, because we're going to need to pursue sustenance. So if we don't have sustenance, then we won't be able to put in time to study Torah, because we'll be busy pursuing parnasa, pursuing a livelihood. On the other hand, if we have a livelihood, but we don't have Torah, if we have kemach, we have plenty of flour, we have plenty of food in the pantry, but we don't have Torah, so then it's as if we have nothing. Because again, similar to what we said earlier, if we're not allowing there's a purpose for that food. That purpose is to sustain us so that we can live Torah lives. And if we don't have Torah in our life, so then it basically renders that food useless. It's not really fulfilling its purpose in creation. So if we don't, on the one hand, if we don't have flour, if we don't have sustenance, we don't have Torah, because we're not going to be able to spend time pursuing Torah studies. On the other hand, if we have sustenance but we don't have Torah, then that sustenance becomes pointless, and it's as if we don't have it in the first place. Okay, that's one. Another possibility. Why do we use flour as an example? So flour is broken down. It's ground wheat, and only humans eat foods with flour, right? Animals just eat the stock without cooking it, without taking it and turning it into something nicer and more tasty. And in fact, when Adam was first cursed in the Garden of Eden, so God says to him that there's going to be thorns and thistles that grow, and you will eat. You're going to eat the grass of the land. So the Midrash says that when Adam heard that, he was very distraught. He said, "Me and my donkey are going to eat from the same trough," meaning like I'm going to eat grass like an animal. I'm the same as an animal. So after that, God said, the famous line, "By the sweat of your brow, you'll eat bread." So that was kind of actually well, we now have to work for our food, but it was a relief that and a way of reminding us that we're not like animals, and we don't just eat the grass straight or the wheat right off the stalk or etc. We have to work. We can't just eat the weeds that grow and the grass that grows. We have to plant, and we have to nurture the land, and that's what it takes to eat. So on the one hand, that's a challenge. On the other hand, that reminds us that we're unique and that we're special and that we are not like animals. So the Mishnah would be telling us, if there wasn't for flour, meaning if we didn't have foods that take work, take effort to produce, so then we wouldn't have Torah, meaning we would be like an animal, and we would never be able to reach the level of perfection that we're striving to reach in Torah, because we would view ourselves as more earthly and animalistic, and somebody who doesn't view themselves as Tzelem Elokim, in the image of God, a human, a special creation, will not. If somebody thinks that they're the same as animals, so then they're not going to be able to achieve levels of perfection that the Torah expects from us. So in Kamach, if we weren't distinguished from animals by the fact that we eat foods with flour, that we eat foods that take skill to prepare, so then we wouldn't be able to achieve anything in Torah, because we would view ourselves just like animals. And on the flip side, im ein Torah ein Kamach. If there wasn't Torah, though, then we wouldn't be different. Meaning, if not for the fact that God wanted to give us Torah and give us a path towards perfection, then he wouldn't have made us any different than the animals. And he would have given us grass to eat, and we would be just like the animals, and we eat grass off the ground. So if we weren't people who eat, we weren't people, right? If we weren't human, people who eat kemach, more fine foods, then we would think of ourselves as animals. We wouldn't be able to reach the perfection that the Torah seeks for us. And on the flip side, if there was no Torah and there wasn't a goal to perfect ourselves and to realize the greatness of a Tzelem Elokim, of someone creating the image of God, then there would be no need for kamach. There would be no need for flour. And the message of this is that we have to recognize that we are a special creation and that we have to strive to fulfill the potential of that special creation that we are. Okay. What else? Oh, so now a little bit of a more, I guess, what's the word? Metaphorical interpretation of the word kemach. So the word kemach, it means flour. What is flour? Like we said, flour is something that's ground up very finely. So he suggests that the Mishnah might be saying that if we don't learn Torah like kemach, if we don't learn the Torah like flour, so then we won't really have Torah. You have to sort of grind it up. You have to break it down into small pieces. It's not just one big chunk that you look at. Like we said before, there's a lot of comparing and contrasting and finding and fine-tuning and finding the importance of the details. All the details matter. The comparisons, you compare this to this, then you conclude, okay, if there's a seeming contradiction, then there must be a resolution. And it takes a lot of breaking down to all the details to really come out with the true message of Torah. So Imein Kemach, if we don't learn Torah like it's something to be broken down into fine flour, then we won't really appreciate what the Torah is teaching us. And on the other hand, Imein Torah in Kemach. But if we don't learn a lot of Torah, then we can't really break it down into fine flour, because so much of it is the ability to compare and contrast one part of Torah to another. So if we don't have a general knowledge of Torah, then we can't really get it into that fine flour and bring out all these important details, because so much of that requires comparison. Okay, as we come to our time, we'll give one more explanation. One more explanation. So it's similar to what we started with in this Imein Kemach Ein Torah. If you don't have sustenance, then you don't have Torah. But looking at it more as from a national picture, meaning if you don't have people involved in Kemach, you don't have people involved in earning a livelihood and working the land and doing the different professions, then you won't be able to have Torah, because we need a society to run. So we need the people. Kemach would be a general example of people making flour, earning flour, but doctors and drivers and storekeepers and lawyers and all the different professions. If we don't have that, then we can't have Torah, because a society doesn't need every profession. We could probably do without certain professions, but so many of the professions are necessary for a society to run. And if we wouldn't have it, then we won't have Torah. For example, right? If we didn't have a place to buy food, then we would have to make the food ourselves. And where would we get the food? We have to go to the farms, or we have to make a farm, right? So everybody needs everybody else, and there would be no time for Torah if everybody had to just provide everything for themselves. We wouldn't really be able to learn much Torah. So Imein Kemach Ein Torah. If you don't have professions, you're not going to have Torah. But on the other hand, if you don't have Torah, then you don't have professions, meaning the world would break down without Torah. We have a concept that again, because the world was created for the purpose of Torah, so then for Torah to be learned, for Torah to be lived, then a world without Torah is a world that would dissolve and cease to be. And so if we don't have Torah, then we won't have a society either, because the world would basically unravel and cease. So so many different approaches. So it's so many details of the Mishnah. I can't really just sum it up with the summary. So if you want the summary, then what you do is you listen to the recording on double speed, and then you can listen to it in a short time, and then you'll get the summary. Okay, we'll stop there. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You are welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.